From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined as always with our super producer, Dylan Seven Stitches Fagan. Most importantly, you are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. If you are tuning in the evening, our listener mail publishes. Let us be the first to welcome you to Thursday, July 17th, 2025. And if you heard us say listener mail, you know what that means, friends and neighbors. It's time to dig up some rutabagas.
This weekend only. Get down to Dillon and Rutabaga Chevrolet for deals. 1995 Rutabaga Cavalier. Only 300 Rutabagas a month. 2007 Rutabaga Cobalt. 0% APR for 72 Rutabagas. Don't even ask about our Corvettes. These deals won't last forever at Dillon and Rutabaga Chevrolet.
Woo!
Wow.
Yes, careful, folks. A legend passes.
Jesus.
My
goodness.
Thanks for
I
classing up the
want to
show.
ask about the Corvettes.
I want to know. I want to ask about the Rutabagas.
I want to ask about the career opportunities.
Yes,
This
for sure.
sounds like a great guy to work with, and we can confirm that.
I've always thought I'd be a great car salesman. Now I'm just doing a Larry David bit. And it's not easy. It's not something that you can just jump into.
Folks, we couldn't be more excited to talk with you. Full disclosure, some of us are on the road, so there may be a couple of little lay hiccups in the sound, but we think we've got everything covered. We can't wait to introduce you to some new and old friends. We're going to talk with multiple people. We're going to learn about Maine. We're going to have some storage space convo. Before we do any of that, we have a bit of an airing of opinions from our dear friends Cheese Out, Dandy Granny, and T-Bone. What say we pause for a word from our sponsor friends and then dive right in?
Yeah.
I cannot wait to hear what Dandy Granny has to say.
For the name or just in general?
Just in general.
Here we go. And we are back. Our first correspondent today actually is going by Pasta Pope, but you'll see why we're calling you Cheese Out. Hello, fellow Earthlings. You can call me Pasta Pope and read or paraphrase this on air as you wish. In the recent listener mail segment about Palantir, Ben brought up the theory that maybe the government has made a sentient AI and immediately killed it. I think this idea could be very close to the truth, but with one big twist. Matt also made the analogy of having a blueprint on the table and groups fighting over it. I think that's relevant to the main problem with creating artificial life. We don't have a blueprint for it because we can't define it properly yet. Humans can build vehicles to go to other planets if we have Lego-like blueprints. You humans can do I caught that, Pasta Pope. You humans can do amazing things if you know how to properly articulate it, because language is a human superpower. However, we don't know how to properly define life. Is a virus alive? Is a plant alive? Yes. Is uranium alive? Interesting. Maybe on the timescale of tens of millions, even the Earth itself appears to be alive. The Gaia hypotheses. Have you ever thought about how weird it is that a person can be dead and then zapped back to life with a defibrillator? I admit I'm not sure that's technically accurate, but still. Check out suspended animation techniques during surgery, where a person is by all means medically dead during the operation. I think
Flatlining for fun.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think, says Pasta Pope, for humans to know we have created a sentient machine, we will have to murder one first. Only after seeing its death will we ever know it was alive. Thanks, and cheese out. I think that's fascinating. The idea that you couldn't really, it reminds me a little bit of early biological and medical experimentation, where you essentially had to kill the organism to learn how it worked. So it's it's intriguing to imagine that kind of logic being transferred toward a digital or, non-organic entity. And I wanted to share that because I want to hear from you guys and all of us listening at home. Does something about that comparison ring true?
Can you kill a god?
Okay, so I'm really trying to understand why you have to kill it first. And I understand that maybe with a biological creature. So in order to get at the inner workings of a biological creature,
Mhm.
we tend to not like it, biological creatures, when our insides come on the outside so you can like see how everything functions.
Right.
But with a machine like that, we're aware of what components went in, right? We know exactly what is functioning to make it a thing.
Mhm.
And in this case, maybe we're thinking about the connections between servers that somehow create consciousness, right? Like if you think about how theoretically our neurons or the fatty parts of the axioms and potentially the quantum linking like creates consciousness, maybe,
Sure.
which is a new thing. Like you could analyze the connections, but you would know what the connections are. You wouldn't have to destroy anything, I don't think.
Well, and I'm glad we're going down this route because there are some assumptions, cheese out, that are inherent in our conversation here, and it's important to explore those in a conspiratorial mindset. Also, side note, yes, Pasta Pope is an awesome moniker. I feel like cheese out is better because that's such a weird way to say goodbye to people. All right, cheese out, you guys. So,
no doubt, cheese out.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the first assumptions that would require the quote unquote murder termination of AI would be the idea that it is not replicable without compromising that mind. So to the idea of a digital or a non-organic mind, if it has already been created once by humans, logically, then could it not simply be copied or a facsimile created? And if that facsimile had the same abilities or indicators of however we define sentience, then it's diabolical, but you could just make multiple copies and experiment at will. And one of those things would be, just in case, how do we kill it? So that's an assumption.
Yeah.
But I think another base assumption is that humans will have created it. Is it not? I mean, we're in the realm of speculation. Is it not just as likely that, or is it not also possible, I should say, that you could create things that are closer and closer to what we call sentience, and those programs or algorithms, through some process humans don't understand, they create the thing we call sentient AI. At that point, it's not replicable by humans.
Oh. And you wouldn't be able to kill it at that point anyway.
Well,
Theoretically,
right.
Speculatively, but yeah, I get like I'm getting stuck on this concept of what would actually be the consciousness when you imagine the types of machines being put together and the way they're linked and the way the power and data flows through, like, vast arrays of machines in order to get the kind of computing power that, our brains currently have. I'm sorry, I'm stuck on this, but I imagine you could theoretically disassemble the network that constitutes the thing that we would consider conscious.
And then try to put it back together, right? To bring it back from the dead. So maybe death is not as permanent as it is for biological organisms. Yeah, I was thinking of that too. And I'm also thinking, in terms of practicality, unfortunately, if it's created by anything associated with the military, then one of the things they're going to need to figure out first is if it's possible to kill it. And that means they will have to attempt murder, because the natural question is, like we were talking about with super soldiers or extraordinary abilities, the natural first step is, can we do this? And the second step is, are we going to be able to stop it or control it in case it turns against us? So unfortunately, that gets very ugly very quickly. And one thing I think we all appreciate, Cheese Out, is that you're pointing towards something that doesn't get brought up in a lot of conversations about sentient, non-organic intelligence. So it's something to chew on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It makes me think about those giant hubs that are being created right now. I think Meta is creating one. Amazon is making one. They're these huge network data hub AI centers that are being created in the middle of nowhere, where they want almost the entire facility to be the thing. And I'm imagining one of those somehow coming online, like in this way.
Right. And you'd almost inevitably, 90+% certainty that you would firewall that kind of thing if you thought it was developing, because it is powered by information in way. Another thing I keep coming back to is the reality that right now, some of the world's smartest experts in these fields will throw up their hands and readily admit that some of these programs are doing things they don't understand, right?
Yeah.
Discovering new chemical combinations, making breakthroughs in math and physics. That's just the beginning, right? That's just the horizon. And the more power you can input, the more information you can input, the greater the likelihood of unpredictable outcomes. So it's pretty fascinating stuff, ethics aside. I think, our big assumption is Cheese Out. We're saying in this letter, you have to murder it to understand it. But maybe the first question is it possible past a certain point to commit that kind of homicide? I would say maybe not.
How about you have to be able to kill it before you can create it?
That's great. Yeah. So that's like in the human version of that, just to show everyone how dark that joke is. In the human version of that, to be eligible to have a child, you would have to be on
demonstrate
record murdering someone first.
Well, you have to demonstrate. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's just this concept of firewalling from outside, potential outside escape, I guess, is how you'd have to imagine it. Like you would have to somehow firewall whatever that system is from the entirety of the internet, or only have you would have to. So you'd have to gather in all the information that you were going to, let's say, feed an MLM. MLM? No. Large LLM. Thinking about the oils,
multi-level
essential
marketing.
oils. Yeah.
I can see an LLM doing MLM. Yeah.
I can see that.
But you'd have to like bring everything in to a network, then an internal network that is no longer connected to the outside after you've transferred the data. Make sure there's zero connection, then transfer that data to the system network we're talking about, so that it has no way of getting out. But again, if it got out, it would have to have access to a similar facility that could make the same types of connections to achieve whatever it's attempting to achieve.
Maybe not necessarily, because one of the big differences is that it could outsource specific, if it had solid communication and power, it could outsource specific processes around the world. So picture a human being that has its different regions of its brain in different centers across a communications network, and its liver is in another state, and its pancreas is in another place. I don't know. It's interesting, because then it does become quickly becomes something like what we would call a weakly godlike entity. It's stuff to chew on, and we want to hear your thoughts, folks. If you consider yourself a non-human sentient intelligence, please be cool with us. We're not the enemy. We're not the meat bags you're looking for. We are going to we are going to hear a lot about this, and we can't wait for you to contact us, whomever you may be. Before we go here, we're not going to get to everybody. Before we go here, we want to want to follow up on Dandy Granny, since we mentioned that lovely name earlier. Dandy Granny has brought up some cool stuff about super soldiers, some troubling stuff as well. Here's what you say. Hello, my audio friends. The super soldier episode was a while ago now, but something's been bothering me. Where would the babies being genetically altered come from? They could probably get the components through shady means and create a zygote, but artificial wombs do not yet exist. And after birth, kids, meaning human children, are kind of useless until at least 6 years old. Are we assuming a sci-fi crash situation? The more I think about it, the darker it gets. And I want to pause there because that's a really good point that we didn't get to, the time investment of raising genetically modified super soldiers. What is their childhood like? Right? What's the danger, of a superhumanly strong kid that doesn't know its own strength, or something that never sleeps?
And also, what is a crash?
A crash is
A crash?
it's like it's a different kind of paper mache. No, it's essentially.
Oh no, I crashed out. Sorry, please.
It's kind of, it puts you on pause. In sci-fi, a crash is like, I don't know about the novels, but a crash in this sense, in the science fiction sense, would be a place to hold those kids and let them naturally grow in situ without moving around, right?
Like 11 style in Stranger Things.
Like 11 style, yeah. Like any of those Hellboy comics you see where a bunch of Nazi experiments are floating in tubes, or you see that in countless sci-fi explorations. The actual definition of crash is a day nursery outside of sci-fi, so it'd be like a dystopian version of that. Probably my favorite use of the word crash is in the novels by Dan Simmons, Hyperion and Hyperion Rising. If you guys have read those, yeah, they've got a great bit with crash. And we'll run into maybe some more sci-fi recs later on in tonight's recording. But it's something to think about, and we'd love to hear from you, folks. How would you raise a super soldier? How would you, as a normal human, be able to do that without dying? We mentioned the boys in our recent episode on surviving nuclear war. And one of the things that the boys comics does very well is depicting the problems of raising superhumans. Even if you're a highly trained regular human, what are you going to do? Kid comes out of the womb and it is born with laser eyes. How do you just keep that kid pointed away from you until you can convince it to turn off its eyes?
Very carefully. Handle with kid gloves.
Always treat this kid as though it's armed.
Yes. Yeah. What if they're just regular kids? You know how you could train them? 24/7 Fortnite and Call of Duty. Martial arts training during the day. We're also going to have ROTC once they hit a certain level. We're going to have Boy Scouts in there.
You're talking about your kid here?
I'm talking about. I'm also kind of talking about us a little bit.
Yeah, the children way get weaponized.
Well, especially American kids.
Yeah,
I don't know. I feel like maybe there's something to some of that, especially when you look at other activities that growing kids get into in other countries.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe I think also some lessons on empathy or improv would be nice. Maybe a musical instrument.
Not for making super soldiers. You don't need any of that.
If you're making generals, you'd be surprised how much of that comes into play. But if you're making foot soldiers, just teach them how to destroy stuff. Dylan also points out, our favorite car salesman, Dylan points out, I'd let them go to normal school until they're ready to pilot their EVAs. Last note on this before we move on. What if it's possible to bake in a time window for emergence of abilities? What if you can somehow bake it in that these abilities don't emerge until adolescence or puberty, after they've had time to be programmed, brainwashed, normalized, acculturated, whatever you want to call it? We want to hear your thoughts, folks, because science fiction is only fiction for so long. This is where we get to something else from Dandy Granny. Dandy Granny, you say, I just like saying your name. You say, on another note, you might want to look into the bad data problems credit bureaus have. They get a lot of data from a lot of places to get an idea of how much garbage information Palantir will have to resolve in order to be anything like useful. And it occurred to me, we've never done a credit bureau episode. We should, right?
Did you guys know that FICO is traded on the public stock exchange?
Yes.
No,
I did not know that until recently. Yeah, and it's very expensive. It's like $2,000 a share. It's wild.
They keep changing my score all the time.
I know. What's the deal?
Yeah. and they keep not agreeing, and it's so difficult to get in contact with them. So, Dandy Granny, it sounds like you've inspired us to do an episode on credit bureaus. And that's going to be hilarious for a lot of our non-US listeners. It's going to be like anytime we talk about healthcare in the States. Last notes from Dandy Granny. You say, I loved your episode on the simple sabotage manual. It reminded me of when I worked in government. Dark humor. Thank you so much for what you do, and feel free to use this as you will. Great food for thought, Dandy Granny. And thank you again so much, because people haven't considered Super Soldier Childhood, which feels like something worth examining. We haven't also done it. It's crazy. We haven't done a credit bureau episode yet. With that, right to us.
We did talk about it, though, in a context of credit cards and the history of credit. Or maybe, now, was that on Ridiculous History, though? We definitely did. It all matches together, but
it's all out there for you.
I'm certain we've talked about, the conspiracies behind credit and credit cards. And in that conversation, that kind of stuff comes up. But you're right, Ben. What are these agencies? Why do they have such a monopoly? And do they even know what they're talking about?
Yeah, and why do they get to be private entities? Why is the onus on the consumer? Whatever. Yeah,
That's why I was so shocked that it was publicly traded, because it's treated almost like a government agency. FICO.
But it's not.
No, big time.
What about Equifax?
What about TransUnion? All right. Yeah, we'll get to all of them if they don't get to us first. In the meantime, yes, please, folks, if you're hearing this, stop the podcast right now before we go to a sponsor break and write down your opinions. Send them to us. You're our favorite part of the show. You're our favorite voices on it. So we're going to pause for a word from our friends in advertising, and then we'll come back with, let's say we move a little bit further north to Maine.
Yes.
Love it.
And we've returned. Gentlemen, I want to jump out of listener mail for a moment just so we can, celebrate the life of someone. Someone very interesting, someone who, guys, was a personal hero of mine. I think we were all influenced and appreciate this human being for various reasons. Complicated human in a lot of ways, but also, I don't know, maybe one of the more important journalists that have ever walked the planet.
Yeah, I would call him a statesman as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's why it's a little complicated. So let's talk about this. Pretty recently, in June of this year, a man passed named Bill Moyers. You probably know that name. Hopefully you know that name. He was a television journalist. He was a lot of things. But specifically for the life of stuff they don't want you to know, he produced a ton of public television on subjects that we have in some way either been inspired by or have taken us down rabbit holes that have created episodes of this show. Stuff like he made something called The Secret Government on the Iran-Contra. And he was one of the only people who would actually go out there on public television and say some of the stuff that maybe a lot of Americans were thinking at the time, and would call out often government, often corporations, and like put the stuff right in your face and say, hey, this is a real problem. And he would do it with a vocabulary that didn't speak down to you as a viewer. It was just, personally, I can't say enough good about this individual. I think I hold him in very high regard. So I just wanted to put that out there, you guys, and offer a couple things for people to check out to learn more about Bill Moyers and all of his work. Do you guys have any thoughts?
Honestly, guys, I'm not nearly as familiar with his work as you two are, and it's something that I need to dig into immediately.
I would check out the context in which Bill Moyers rose. Not a Charlie Rose reference. He is best known as a journalist and commentator, but he also spent time in the White House. He was the press secretary. He was pretty much the chief of staff for a while during the Johnson administration. And, I wouldn't say, to the point about vocabulary, I would say it wasn't that he was speaking simply, it's that he was speaking clearly. And honestly,
he was speaking with a full, extensive vocabulary.
Right.
And what I meant by that is that he would use these large words in talking to the American people via public, means. We've talked about it before on the show, but the way, especially the news right now, speaks and the level of vocabulary that is used in a regular basis, it's just so low bar.
I see what you're saying.
And when you would listen to him speak, it was often, like a lot of these other giants of journalism that were out there on the evening news speaking to the American public, there's an intelligence to it that didn't assume you didn't know things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I appreciate that. I mean, to finish what I was saying there, I think the idea of speaking candidly and clearly in a non-performative way, that's what I wanted to get to. That's a power that often gets forgotten. In the days of journalism past, we saw a lot of that. We saw people who would have got, time proves they clearly would get talking points, especially very high level anchors. They would get talking points from all manner of businesses and all facets of government. And if it didn't pass the journalistic sniff test, they would not play the game. You would not have seen someone like Bill Moyers later have private communications exposed, like those folks on Fox News, where they say they knew they were telling the public something that wasn't true. He wasn't that kind of guy. And he had also I think of him as a Renaissance man, because in addition to being so instrumental in government policy for a time, he was also active in the Peace Corps. He was trying to make the world a better place, and he was not afraid to hold conversations with folks that we would call academics, who often would get ignored by other mainstream news platforms.
Oh, yeah. He did one of the first interviews with Jimmy Carter when absolutely nobody on the planet knew who Jimmy Carter was. And then he interviewed him, and the world kind of learned who this guy was, who this minister was. And interestingly enough, an early part of his life, he was a Baptist minister, which makes me think about how he spoke, when he's talking down the lens to the camera, but really ultimately to just people sitting in their homes. That kind of tact, I think you can see that thread and that influence there. And just going back to Lyndon Johnson, he was essentially Lyndon Johnson's protege. Johnson thought of him like a son. And then there's this moment you can read about where they had a break because Lyndon Johnson was making some turns with his policy and continuing the Vietnam War. So Moyers ended up leaving, and he ended up going to CBS and spending time there, and then fought with executives there to get more airtime for some of the important stories he wanted to tell, and then ended up going to PBS and NPR and those routes because it was not this big corporate giant. And I wanted to read this quick quote from him before we move on here. Here it is. This is from Bill Moyers. He says, quote, "I think my peers in commercial television are talented and devoted journalists, but they've chosen to work in a corporate mainstream that trims their talent to fit the corporate nature of American life. And you do not get rewarded for telling the hard truths about America in a profit-seeking environment." And I think that's a big deal, right?
Well said.
Awesome person. You can head over to americanarchive.org and you can see the special collection that they have of Bill Moyers stuff. We're talking like 47-minute programs, Bill Moyers' journal, which is just incredible. These like video essays he would create where he's interviewing people, but he's also just almost philosophically discussing a big topic that's affecting a bunch of people. huge stuff.
And he is just a bevy of phenomenal quotes informed by his vast scope of experience. One of my favorites, might be paraphrasing, is war, except in self-defense, is a failure of moral imagination. And the concept of moral imagination has stuck with me for so long. It's a deep phrase the more I think about it.
Oh, wow.
I agree. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Huge stuff. Oh, and just go to the American Archive and check it out. There is a website called billmoyers.com, but I think 2017, 2018, he officially stopped making new stuff for that website or stopped being officially associated with it, but it has an archive of its own. It's really cool too. Check that out. All right. Quickly, guys, let's hear a message from Paul, who is living in Maine, and he's speaking to something we've discussed before on the show that I think, I don't know, we could at least have a good chat about. Here we go. This is Paul.
Hey, this is Paul from Maine. Maine recently became the first state to enshrine the right to food into the state constitution. And this gave citizens the right to raise backyard animals, grow a garden, save, exchange seeds, operate cottage bakeries out of their homes, even if local zoning rules or regulations prohibited those things. Now, I own a seed company, so this is personally quite convenient for me. But if your neighbor was slaughtering chickens in their backyard, would you consider that to be their basic human right, or just another opportunity to bruise the egos of your local HOA board members? Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts on food sovereignty and the right to food more broadly. Is this a fundamental human right that we should all have access to, or a dangerous new freedom? Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, y'all, after just having that conversation about nuclear holocaust, it's sort of like, isn't this a right to survive?
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And immediate reaction there. First off, Paul, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this, Matt. Yes, that the right to food should even be a conversation where people will argue against it is baffling. It's sort of like that terrible situation with Nestle a while back when they were arguing that it's better for the world to privatize water. I mean,
better for the world, or
right?
Better for Nestle,
exactly.
Yeah,
or better for what world, right? Which world do you want to live in? And so I would say maybe the big difference, logical differentiation here, Paul, between a right and a privilege is that a right should be something that people cannot exist reasonably without. A right to education, a right to water, to air, to shelter, to food. These are things that every human being deserves by virtue of being human. If the right to food is not a thing, then we quickly could arrive at a situation wherein children are born in debt. You know what I mean? Who's going to feed you if you don't? If you're an infant, you don't have a right to food. Are you going to bake in time constraints? I'm very biased on this because I think it's the right thing to do to allow people access to nutrition.
Yeah, I completely agree. Guys, to learn a little more, let's read the 2021 legislation that went through on, I think it was January 2021 in the 130th Maine legislature. It's pretty simple, guys. It's section 25. It's an amendment. It says right to food, and I'll just read it. All individuals have a natural, inherent, and unalienable right to save and exchange seeds. That's a big deal. And the right to grow, raise, harvest, produce, and consume the food of their own choosing for their own nourishment, sustenance, bodily health, and well-being. As long as an individual does not commit trespassing, theft, poaching, or other abuses of private property rights, public lands, or natural resources in the harvesting, production, or acquisition of that food. Right? So don't steal anything, but if you've got food, you have the right to make food.
Right.
If you got land.
Yes. If you got a place to do it.
Right. So you can't go into a park in Bangor and all of a sudden say, I'm taking over this. It's my rutabaga crop. I also recommend for anything like this, checking out Ballotpedia. It's an open source reference. It's not perfect, but it's a great way to get an overview of how these things are introduced, the specific language. It has the links to the primary sources, and it'll also give you the back and forth of the people for and against these measurements. So that's a great way to stay informed, especially if you have questions about your local state legislation.
Absolutely. And something to note here is that prior to this vote, there, I think it was 9 or 10 years of a bunch of money getting put into advocacy for a bill like this, specifically food sovereignty, the concept, right? It's almost like PR, but at the same time, there was just a lot of money being pumped into, hey, we should have the right to food, right? You know, that concept, putting that idea into everyone's mind, then this was able to get pushed through. And it had to be grassroots because in the US, the right to food is looked at in a very different way. We've discussed SNAP programs like free lunches in public schools and a lot of other programs that operate at the federal level as well as some at the state level.
Which are getting scaled back significantly, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But the United States in general does not view the right to food in the same way as Maine currently does.
Well, even like dumpster diving is illegal.
Yeah. Food is a commodity. It's like that time I almost got arrested working at a bakery for giving away bread.
Dude.
Right. And the idea of giving away leftovers is somehow considered a health code violation, like, you know, actual edible food, like you're talking about, Ben, or things that end up in dumpsters. It's like sometimes they put locks on them because it is considered a health code violation. And that is pretty wild. You can even get in trouble, speaking of HOAs, for putting, there was a guy that just got in trouble with an
water
HOA
bottle.
For putting bottles of water in the yard. Yeah.
I just discussed this with the family. Like that, it's such an interesting thing where, you know, a group of people can be against something for personal reasons, right? Or personal gain reasons or some kind of conflict of interest that they just don't want free stuff to get out there.
I mean, okay. Also, I'm going to say it, guys. I think we're all on the same page. HOAs are an example of how people with the smallest amount of power can trip to the most extreme degrees. That's why I don't know if you guys have HOAs.
No, thank God. Couldn't deal with it.
Yeah,
mine's fantastic.
Well, good. Yeah, good. Lucky you.
Good. I hope it stays there, because ultimately what an HOA and even a federal level institution shows us is that the government is made of the people, right? And that determines the action. Again, any group of people is simply the story it tells itself. So tell the truthful one, you know?
Similar to tenant boards in like New York City, like if you're, you know, live in an apartment building. I think it's a similar setup.
But what if the people aren't really people? They're just considered people by the law.
Or what if they're
AKA corporations?
Right. Shout out Citizens United. Or what if they're propped up as proxies by, say, you know, like the Reedy Creek Improvement District over in Disney, or like investment firms who buy up all the houses in a zip code, like I'm just going to make one up here, 30306 in Fulton County, Georgia.
Hey,
just off the cuff, you know, just one random. Of many examples. But again, I think maybe not maybe, in my mind, the most important thing to take away from here is the truth that a commodity is different from a necessity. It should be different from a necessity. Its most basic thing, in its most basic sense, what can be defined as a right should also be defined as something that is necessary for a fully lived human existence. To deny that is to deny, on a very evil level, it's to deny the humanity of other humans. And it's a shame that it's 2025 in this stupid, imperfect calendar, and people still have not been honest as a civilization about that.
Here's why. I think, in my opinion, Ben, I'm going to read a quick quote here from the Hunter College New York City Food Policy Center. It's an article they posted on May 1st, 2024, written by Anna Speck. Down at the bottom here, it notes that the United Nations General Assembly passed a similar right to food resolution in the same year, 2021, with the United States and Israel the only two member states to outright reject the resolution. Here it continues. Reasons given by the U.S. for rejecting the resolution include, this is a quote inside the quote, inaccurate linkages between climate change and human rights related to food, a lack of focus on solutions to food insecurity, and a lack of information regarding agricultural innovation and the protection of intellectual property rights as a way to incentivize innovation.
Right, like terminating seed lines. I remember we mentioned this when the UN issued that back in 2020, and it stays relevant today. I'm sorry that I'm interjecting so much on this, but this is something that really hits home with me, and it should hit home with everybody who's seen, privation and famine and food insecurity situations. This is not just a real problem. It's also a problem that right now is way easier to fix than the powers that be would have you believe.
But that's why we have Infamil and Similac and all the baby formula.
And what's that peanut stuff? It's on my mind because it's French, but there's a peanut butter based substitute that can be great for nutritional safety, but it's still privatized. So institutions and nonprofits have to buy it from the company.
Big peanut, we're coming for you.
It's called Plumpy Nut. That's Plumpy with a Y apostrophe nut.
Oh,
Plumpy Nut.
I'm going to look into that more. I don't know anything about it. Thank you, Ben.
Amazing.
Well, thank you, Paul, for sending in that message about that. And thank you, Bill Moyers, for being who you were. And we'll be right back with more messages from you.
And we have returned with our final listener mail segment of this evening's episode, starting off with a missive from Potatoes Gun. Not Potato Gun, not Potato Guns, Potatoes Gun.
Oh.
Hey, everybody, says Potatoes Gun. I think that you should do an episode on big storage, as in warehouses that will just store stuff for years and never sell or move it, or maybe U-Haul storage facilities. Feel free to use this on the air. I know it's something, Potatoes Gun, that has come up in passing. We've talked about this and maybe money laundering type episodes and stuff like that, but I did think it was worth a mention on its own because I found a pretty cool Reddit thread that y'all are linked to in the doc there. Storage units everywhere. Money laundering? ? And this is in our conspiracy, which I know y'all are frequent visitors to. And this comes from user Ricker122589. I live in Maine. For the past couple of years, there have been an astonishing amount of storage units being built and opened, several per town, some not even a quarter of a mile away from each other. With the economy in the hole, and this was a couple of years ago, probably still holds true to some degree, and material being very expensive, this seems very strange and counterintuitive. Folks all around me are having a harder time paying for groceries, gas, etc., but there's such a demand to pay $50 to $200 a month to store your junk that you don't have room for at your residence. My theory is that some of these storage units are being put up to launder or wash money. Let's say you have 100 units, only 50 are being used at $100 a month. You send in your tax information to the government saying all 100 units are full and being paid majority in cash, which you then can deposit into an account. That's $5,000 a month that once was dirty or what have you, that's now clean. I'm sure there is much more to it than that, but that would be the gist of it. And they accidentally wrote the jest of it, which I like, and then they later corrected it. Y'all, I do think it's interesting because I'm actually a storage unit renter myself. I've got 3 units, and my experience has been that any storage unit company that is a chain or has some sort of professional quality to them, legit, let's just say, they're not really cash businesses. I'm set up on auto pay for my units, and it's a company that has units all across the country. It's actually called Storage Units of America or something along those lines. So my experience with that is maybe that's not the best of businesses to launder money, but there are some other good kind of counterpoints to that on this Reddit thread, and I'm curious what y'all think. Obviously, the go-tos are things like nail salons, laundromats, bars, restaurants, strip clubs, laser tag, if you're nasty, and of course, car washes.
Well, I do wonder. Yeah, that is interesting, because I wonder if you could take cash into that business, Noel, and pay for your month or something. I wonder if they would even accept that. But if they did, then the whole thing works, right?
Doesn't feel like my particular company is set up to do that.
Okay.
But if you were in more rural areas and you did have individual proprietors building these, because one point that comes up a lot is how inexpensive they are to build, because they're these prefab metal sheds kind of. And if you have the land, it's not incredible. It's not an incredible outlay of cash to put that infrastructure together. So that, like here's an example. I work for a successful developer in the process of building a 40-acre storage facility directly across the street from 2 existing facilities. My entire county consists of less than 50,000 people and contains nearly 20 similar facilities. I'm no businessman, but dude I work for swears the numbers don't lie. I'm not in a position to argue, as everything this man touches turns into a gold mine. Not going to lie, though, I've absolutely considered money laundering to be a plausible motivation here. That wasn't the best example proving that point or supporting that point, but here's a good point here, a counter, I guess, to the money laundering argument, and then we'll have one for no need to launder money. It's like the lowest form of rent seeking and basically just takes advantage of bad economies, causing people to move down to smaller living arrangements or get divorced. You'd have a hard time keeping them empty.
Mm-hmm. Oh, to interject here, if that's all right.
Please.
One of the interesting things that we haven't talked about yet is that a lot of these places, I think the majority will require some kind of ID. So if an audit occurs and they're saying, hey, what's happening this money, there would be books to look at. So I agree with the fact that there are more viable forms of money laundering operations. You could probably also maybe launder money in the construction of the thing, depending on how you do it.
Do that Sopranos move where you list more items than you actually used.
Sure.
In your manifest.
Exactly.
Right?
There's also an inescapable fact, at least here in the States, that a lot of people don't like to deal with, which is it's a society where a lot of people have a lot of stuff and are more than willing to pay for the premium of not throwing that stuff away or saying goodbye to it.
For sure. Yeah. For me, it's all stuff from my mom's house. So it's like something that I'm going to one day have to sift through and deal with. But in the meantime, it's something that I don't have to worry about right now.
And people also, to that excellent point about the economy from the Reddit thread we're citing here, people also don't just use those storage spaces to store stuff they can't fit in their current domicile. Some people indeed live off the grid in a storage space. So they're used for a lot of other things. I could see it, I guess I could see it being a avenue in some cases for money laundering, definitely some drug crime cases, but as an overall practice, I don't know. It's kind of like the mattress firm conspiracy when we figured out, some are probably organized crime fronts, but a lot of them have mattresses that are so expensive and rent that is so low that they don't actually have to sell that many mattresses to stay open.
And ultimately, it's a real estate game.
And ultimately, it's a real estate game like McDonald's.
As is the case with building these units. Absolutely a real estate game in this case as well. Last one I want to mention, I thought there was a very implausible, if interesting perspective from Analysis 1113951. Absolutely, 100%. This is also in the Reddit thread. Noticed the same thing in my neck of the woods, the Southwest, although I have a slightly more nefarious take on it. I observed that almost all storage unit locations have this weird, almost tower-like structure in the front. I've always wondered about those myself with the U-Haul. You know what I'm talking about, guys?
No.
Okay. Well, oftentimes in U-Haul storage facilities and other storage facilities, there will be a kind of tower-like structure in the front that has logos on it, and there'll be windows in it, sometimes with advertisements in the windows. But it is odd, and it is an odd shape. And I've always wondered what the deal is with that, because it doesn't seem very functional, or that it would be able to house an office on each of the little levels. So they go on. I've observed that almost all storage unit locations, and I wouldn't say all because I don't think, maybe Matt, you haven't seen it, but I've seen them from time to time here in the South as well, have this weird, almost tower-like structure in the front. Now, I understand that this could be used to view the whole property, but it really makes me think these places look like total makeshift prison camps. Like when shit hits the fan and the system needs immediate access to resources, facilities to detain undesirables, what better place to utilize and detain citizens? But it makes you stop and think. Hence the name of this sub, who anticipated, planned to build and be ready for such an event. It's a wild one, but I had to bring it up.
Wow.
Yeah. We're going to move on really quickly. I just want to mention another message. Thank you, by the way, to Potatoes Gun. This one from Kyle about gas stations and gas station food in particular. Kyle says, hey, fellas, in Scottsdale, there's a pretty well-known barbecue joint inside a gas station called Tom's Thumb, named after a mountain nearby. It has over 2,000 Google reviews and I believe was featured on an episode of, what is it, Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives? Isn't that the
Triple
guy?
D?
Triple D is how he puts it. I was just never seen it put that way. Best Kyle. And you're absolutely right, Kyle. Here in the South, which is, I think, maybe our main experience with this, but also in the West, on the West Coast, you will often see really good taquerias connect. Actually, that's not true. In the West Coast, gas stations are much more gas stations or gas stations. Some of them don't even sell snacks. They're very much almost more like European style gas stations. But here in the South, you will often see places that have really good fried chicken. And really good like country breakfasts in the morning and stuff like that, and barbecue, etc. It is an interesting way to have oftentimes startup kind of smaller companies that maybe have evolved from a food truck looking for a brick and mortar space. They'll rent some space in a locally owned or franchised gas station that allows for that kind of thing. We have a lot of those here in the Atlanta area. And I did want to pull up a thread mentioning from Food Map every day, just mentioning 6 much more large scale gas station type places that I hadn't heard of. Of course, Buc-ee's is mentioned, but we've got a place called Mavericks that is, I believe, more in the Southwest. Maverick chain has about 400 stores in 12 Western states, and is known for its adventure and Western themed logo and decor. And they have it at this place, something called the Mother of All Burritos, or the Moab, which they apparently sell about 24,000 of every single day, which is like a really nice breakfast burrito situation with eggs, hash browns, and a whole lot of meat, as the article puts it. They also have breakfast nachos with steak and eggs and stuff like that. So
nice. Isn't Moab a thing we've talked about before on the show, except it was
Moab
Mother of
is
all
a place.
bombs?
Well, yeah, but isn't Moab also a place in Utah? It's like a really mountainy kind of outdoorsy spot. People like Painted Mountains, I believe they call them, Moab, Utah. But Mother of all bombs, absolutely. Mother of all burritos, why not?
Oh, it's the Massive Ordnance Air Blast Bomb. That's how I remember talking about it on this show, at least.
Got it. And who could talk about gas station food on the flip side of the gross version without talking about the episode of Futurama where Fry buys a men's room egg salad sandwich from a vending machine over the toilet that would typically dispense things like prophylactics. So, y'all, I'm going to cut this one short for today, but do write into us with your favorite gas station eats in your neck of the global woods. Absolutely great recommendation. Another one that I mentioned, in Athens, Georgia, there's a place called the Bread Basket that is, again, like country biscuits, country breakfast, and lunch, meat in 3 situation that you can enjoy if you're ever passing through Athens, Georgia. So thanks, Potatoes Gun and Kyle, for writing in.
Thanks also to Cheese Out, to Dandy Granny, to Paul, to Bill Moyers, and T-Bone. Thanks, man. We didn't have time to get to you this evening, but would love to follow up with your fantastic exploration of a cashless society. Happy birthday as well, belated, much belated, to our own Nick Turbo Benson, the illustrator for our book titled Stuff They Don't Want You to Know. We can't wait to hear from you because, folks, one thing we love about our weekly listener mail segment is that it informs episodes in the future. We always get great ideas from your fellow conspiracy realists. So join up, write us an email, give us a call on the phone, or find us on the lines.
You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist all over the internet, specifically on Facebook with our Facebook group Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on X, FKA, Twitter, and on YouTube with video content for you to enjoy and or peruse. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we are Conspiracy Stuff Show.
We have a phone number. It is 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know within the message if we can use your name and message on the air. If you want to send attachments, links, words, why not send us an email? We are
the entities that read each piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware, yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. We want to hear everything that's on your mind, as short, as long as you wish to make it. Please do let us know if anonymity is key, and we will do the best we can to preserve your identity. Big shout out to a recent sci-fi story recommendation we got, A Perfect Fit by Isaac Asimov. It's a short story. It takes just a minute to read it. It's more than worth your time. Tell us your thoughts and tell us other recommendations for things you think your fellow audience members should check out. Conspiracy at iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.